Today we're going to begin reading Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Their Eyes Are Watching God is a coming-of-age novel that tells the story of one woman's journey of self-discovery. Remember that in this unit, the focus question we are looking at is it better to conform to society and other people's expectations or to live life your own way? How can conforming help us be happy? How can rebelling help us be happy? Throughout this novel, Janie is asking herself these questions. Is it better to conform to society and the expectations of Nanny and the men in her life? Or is it better to find her own way to live? As you read about Janie's attempts to find happiness, continue to think about your own life. How can conforming help you to be happy? How can rebelling help you to be happy? Is how you're living your life now making you happy? If not, what changes could you make in your life to be happier? To better understand this novel, it will be helpful to know more about the author Zora Neale Hurston. On Google Classroom, I have attached a short biography of Hurston's life. I want you to take a few minutes and read the article silently to yourself. As you read, I will give each of you a number. When you finish reading, respond to your assigned number on Google Classroom. Then we will go over your answers as a class. Another piece of information to note from Hurston's biography is the mention of the town of Eatonville, Florida. Hurston grew up in this town, but it is also one of the settings in the novel. Remember that this novel takes place during segregation in the early 20th century. Eatonville is an interesting place because it was the first all-Black incorporated town in the United States. That means that the entire town was inhabited and run by Black people. Because this is a part of history that we rarely learn about, many students find this confusing at first and assume that some of the characters are white. But one of the unique things about this book is that nearly every character is Black. To understand this novel, it is also helpful to review a little bit about dialect. Dialect is the distinctive speech pattern of a particular region, class, or race. Unlike slang, dialect has a distinct and well-developed system of grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. Through dialect, authors are able to create a realistic story, believable characters, and an authentic feeling setting. Hurston's use of dialect can be tricky for many readers, so we're going to practice. I'm going to pass out some quotes from the novel, and with your partner, I want you to paraphrase the quote by putting it in standard American English. The last thing we need to go over before we begin reading is the idea of a frame narrative. If you're taking honors, remember that we talked about frame narratives when we did our Rewind narrative project. A frame narrative is a story that has an inner story framed by an outer story. This novel begins when Janie returns to Eatonville and begins telling her story to Phoebe. Then the novel flashes back and tells the story of Janie's whole life. At the end, we return to the scene where Janie is telling her story to Phoebe. What are some other examples of frame narratives that you can think of from books or movies? When an author uses a frame narrative, it often gives away the ending before the story even begins. This technique can build suspense and also reveal important details that the reader will need to know to understand the story. As we read, we'll pause periodically to explore what Hurston reveals through this frame narrative techniques. Okay, let's begin reading. Turn your books to Chapter 1, Page 1. Ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. For some they come in with the tide, for others they sail forever on the horizon, never out of sight, never landing, until the watcher turns his eyes away in resignation, his dreams mocked to death by time. That is the life of men. Now women forget all those things they don't want to remember and remember everything they don't want to forget. The dream is the truth. Then they act and do things accordingly. So the beginning of this was a woman, and she had come back from burying the dead. If I were reading this novel for the first time, I might be thinking right now, okay, Miss Peters, you've lost me already. I'm already confused. But I know as a reader that when I'm feeling confused, I can always pause and look back at what I just read. So let's look more closely at these two paragraphs. Ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. So I'm picturing a ship, and on it I see wishes and dreams. For some, they come in with the tide. For others, they sail forever on the horizon, never out of sight, never landing. So there's a ship carrying wishes and dreams, and sometimes those wishes and dreams come in with the tide, so we get them, and sometimes they're always out on the horizon, so we don't get them. For others, they sail forever on the horizon, never out of sight, never landing, until the watcher turns his eyes away in resignation, his dreams mocked to death by time. So the dreamer feels resigned about this situation, like sometimes I get my dreams and sometimes I don't. Oh well, that's life. And then the next line is, that is the life of men. So she's talking about men here. Men are like, sometimes I get my dreams and sometimes I don't. Oh well, that's life. Now I want you to do the same thing with the next paragraph. How are women different from men, according to Hurston? Hurston sets up a contrast between men and women here that many people today would not agree with. What I want you to focus on, though, is the next line. So the beginning of this was a woman, and she had come back from burying the dead. Based on Hurston's generalization of women in the previous paragraph, what inferences can we make about Janie? What predictions can we make about what this novel will be about? Okay, let's continue reading. Don't mind us, Lulu smiled. Just go right ahead. Us can mind your house for you till you get back. My supper is done. You better go see how she feel. You can let the rest of us know. Lord, Pearl agreed. I done scorched up that little meat and bread too long to talk about. I can stay away from home long as I please. My husband ain't fussy. Or, Phoebe, if you's ready to go, I could walk over there with you, Mrs. Sumpkins volunteered. It's sort of dusking down dark. The booger man might catch you. Nah, thank you. Nothing couldn't catch me these few steps I'm going. Anyhow, my husband tell me say no first-class booger would have me. If she got anything to tell you, you'll hear it. Phoebe hurried on off with a covered bowl in her hands. She left the porch pelting her back with unasked questions. They hoped the answers were cruel and strange. When she arrived at the place, Phoebe Watson didn't go in by the front gate and down the palm walk to the front door. She walked around the fence corner and went in the intimate gate with her heaping plate of mulatto rice. Janie must be around that side. Okay, let's look back at these pages that we've just read and this conversation between the townspeople. Based on the townspeople's gossiping, what inferences can we make about Janie? Okay, let's continue reading. They sat there in the fresh young darkness close together, Phoebe eager to feel and do through Janie, but hating to show her zest for fear it might be thought mere curiosity. Janie full of that oldest human longing, self-revelation. Phoebe held her tongue for a long time, but she couldn't help moving her feet. So Janie spoke. They don't need to worry about me and my overhaul as long as I still got $900 in the bank. TK got me into wearing and following behind him. TK ain't wasted up no money of mine, and he ain't left me for no young gal neither. He gave me every consolation in the world. He'd tell him so, too, if he was here, if he wasn't gone. Phoebe dilated all over with eagerness. Tea-cake gone? Yeah, Phoebe, tea-cake is gone. And that's the only reason you see me back here, 'cause I ain't got nothing to make me happy no more where I was at, down in the Everglades there, down on the muck. It's hard for me to understand what you mean the way you tell it, and then again, I'm hard of understanding at times. Nah, 'tain't nothing like you might think, so 'tain't no use in telling you something unless I give you to understand to go along with it. Unless you see the fur, mink skin ain't no different from a raccoon hide. Looky here, Phoebe. Sam waiting on you for supper? It's all ready and waiting. If he ain't got sense enough to eat it, that's his hard luck. Well, then we can sit right where we is and talk. I got the house all open up to let this breeze get a little catching. Phoebe, we've been kissing friends for 20 years, so I depend on you for a good thought. Now I'm talking to you from that standpoint. Time makes everything old, so the kissing young darkness became a monstropolis old thing while Janie talked. Okay, look back at this conversation between Janie and Phoebe. Based on this conversation, what additional inferences can we make about Janie? Let's go back to our focus question from the beginning. In the next few chapters, we'll continue reading about Janie's journey to find happiness. Before we go on to chapter 2, I want you to start thinking about your own state of happiness. In your HyperDoc for this week, I have included a survey asking you questions about your personal happiness level. Let's take a few minutes to fill in the survey.